So without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Dr. Marcia Reynolds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yes, I have many, many years in leadership development and teaching programs around that. And I actually have been a student as well as a researcher of behavioral change for 3 decades. And yet I'm still challenged at times. So 10 years ago, I was invited to teach in a leadership program for Maersk, the Danish shipping company. And I was very excited about this opportunity. So the very first class was in Copenhagen. And the morning went well, I thought. And then in the afternoon, I was starting to teach some concepts from emotional intelligence. And all of a sudden, this guy started asking me all these questions. And I handled that fairly well. And then there was another one, and they wanted to know, like, how did I know what I knew? And could there be any other possibilities? And I felt this, like, wave of annoyance coming up. And it took everything not to be defensive. I mean, I was teaching emotional intelligence. And the head of HR was in the room. So at the break, I was walking over to her, and she starts saying to me, wow, they're really loving this. They're so engaged. I'm like, really? She says, yeah, they're asking so many questions. Oh. She says, don't you know that's how Danes learn? They're taught at a very young age to challenge and to ask questions and to debate with their teachers, because that's, how they really get into the information. And all of a sudden I felt this wave of pride coming through my body. And I was so encouraged that when I went back after the break, I asked them questions, and so we challenged each other and set up some debate. And I say this because even though I've been teaching emotional intelligence for 20 years now, I'm still human. And I get triggered and I react. And what I want you to know, before we get into anything else, emotional intelligence is not to stop emotions. It's not to make them go away. It's to notice when they show up and then choose what to do next. That as human beings, we are emotional. And it's good. Emotions give us life. But when they show up, what do you do with them? That's the question. But we've been asking this question for a very long time. So even the Greek philosopher Epictetus said, we are disturbed, men are disturbed not by things that happen, but by their opinions of the things that happen. We've been looking at this emotional reaction and how does it create our thoughts and our behavior for a very long time. And actually, those opinions are framed by our emotional reaction. So we have an emotion, and then we construct our judgments, our opinions, and our sense of reality. That reality is actually constructed from emotional impulse. So we all have a map of the world according to me. And I fiercely protect that. And even when you challenge it, even though your challenge might be valid, I'm still protecting my reality, even though, as Einstein says, reality is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. We like to believe what we think is true. And so when we talk about challenge and that it's good to challenge, yet sometimes when we challenge, we have that reaction because we have to protect what we know and who we think we are. But that's part of emotional intelligence, is noticing when that shows up, and then choosing what to do next. So the speed of resilience, where resilience is the ability to look beyond. In fact, you cannot see outside of the box until you first see the box. So when I have a judgment, an opinion, a reaction, that I can stop and say, what's that about? That's interesting. And question it. That's what we're looking to do. So when we talk about emotional awareness, it's not just saying, what am I feeling, but it's trying to understand why. And then, as a leader, we're looking at how can we also increase the speed of resilience, again, where we're able to look beyond what we think we know, to see other possibilities, to take other action. That we inspire other people to do that through emotions. It's not that we tell them there's another way and you should go do it. Because knowledge doesn't change behavior. I mean, think about it. Raise your hand if you know there's some things you should be doing in this life, but you're just not doing them. Raise your hand. Thank you. Knowledge doesn't change behavior. Just because I know doesn't mean that it's going to change what I do. That it takes an emotion to actually move us forward. So when you talk about your leadership, the actions that, what is enabling others? It's instilling confidence. Or encouraging the heart is its inspiration. And modeling the way includes your emotions, not just the actions you take, but the leader sets the emotional tone. And whatever it is that you want other people to feel, you better be feeling that yourself, because they're going to sense it. They're going to pick that up even before you open your mouth. And it makes a difference about what's going to happen next. So just to give you the context of what it is I believe to be true in my frame, is that we perceive, but before we even think about it, emotions then move through your body. So there's emotional energy that's going on within the body and between us. And you're going to see me do this. Whenever I talk emotions, I have a habit of doing this. Because fear, anger, anxiety, doubt, all of that creates a biological reaction. It's happening here before it comes here. So I often do this. So emotions, the waves of emotions are going through your body, and then your brain interprets what's happening. And so we have perception, I see, but then I react, and then I think about it. I mean, and I know that many of you have read books, I did too, back in, especially in the 60s and 70s, you change your thoughts, you change your behaviors. and as if we can control our behaviors just with our thoughts. But how many of you drive, okay, and you get in a lot of traffic and you're running late, and what happens? And you tell yourself to be patient, how long does that last? You have to turn on music or look up at the sky or do something to change your emotion in order to create the thought. And it happens so quickly, as Carl Jung said, there's no emotional no compass, no moral compass to our emotions. They just happen. And so they're not justified, there's not logic behind it. It just occurs. And so I tell you this because I want you to quit being angry with yourself for having a reaction. All right? Don't feel guilty and don't be angry. It just is. I'm a crier. It just happens. And the more I can just accept it, the more power I have over it. It happens first. And to take it even deeper, if you want to really contemplate this, back in a time when we were really fascinated by machines and not wanting to think about emotions, it was William James who said, are we afraid because we see the bear? Or are we afraid because we're running from the bear? That consciousness lags quite a bit behind our reaction. And I know this to be true because I do hike in Arizona and I run into rattlesnakes. And I'm all the way up on the top of the mountain before I go, oh, snake. So especially when we perceive a threat, and the threat isn't always a snake or a bear. It's often a threat to my credibility, who I think I am, how I see the world, that I respond the same way. They say that feedback often reacts in your brain as if somebody held a gun to your head. That if we don't take it quite well, then we have this reaction. And then it formulates our opinions, our judgments, and then it constructs our reality, our thoughts, our behavior. So we make decisions with our emotions, and then we brilliantly rationalize them with our logic. I mean, haven't you listened to yourself talking sometimes and you say, why am I saying that? I don't really believe that, but I keep saying it, you know? Or somebody might, question you and you jump in to defend yourself, all the while you're thinking, but that might not be a bad idea. Why is it that I'm resisting it? But we do. And so again, the emotional intelligence is the ability to stop and say, wow, look at me. I'm really getting reactive here. What's going on? What's going on? And after the break, when we get into the assignments, I'm going to help you really discern what is it that caused that to happen so you really have more power over it. So my question to you is, are you willing to pause, to take a pause and really question, what's going on? Can you observe yourself? And that's what's amazing about human beings, is that we do have this ability, this observer, this witness, where we can actually stand apart and say, oh, look at you, look what you're doing. Isn't that fascinating? And the more you practice this, the more you strengthen that ability. And it does take practice, because you're overriding a lot of habit of emotional reaction that's been happening for years. But with not that much practice, that you can develop this awareness to really look at yourself and to question it, and to know then you have other choices of what to do next. So you have a choice. You can act by choice or you can act by impulse. And again, we have a tendency to act by impulse, but emotional intelligence, that awareness, that regulation, that understanding, helps us to act by choice. And what's amazing about the practice is, as you practice, you're actually expanding the transmitters that connect with your logical and conscious brain and your emotional brain, which naturally increases your empathy. So the practice of self-awareness actually makes you more biologically able to understand others. And you can't do it the other way around. You can't just say, I can understand you, but not myself. So we have to start with ourselves. So emotional intelligence is the ability to notice, just to stop, to pause and say, what's going on here? What's happening? So again, it's not to stop the reaction. That's not going to happen. You'll beat yourself up trying to do that. But the quicker you can pause and say, what's happening here? And again, I'm pointing here because you're going to catch it here. The quicker I can go, oh, I'm angry, or I'm scared. So I can notice it, I can think about it, make sense of it. Why is this happening? And know that it's not necessarily logical, usually not. And then I can choose what's next. And not only do you make the best choices then for yourself, but when you're looking at working with others, this is what helps you then to enable them, to encourage them to model the way. There's so much of that. It's not your actions, it's who you're being in the moment. But the problem is, as we talked about before we started, I was talking to Pam and Nicole about literacy. We don't have a literacy around emotions. So if you tell me, what were the messages you were given growing up about emotions? What were you told? Shut it. Stop it, right? What else? Emotions make you what? Look weak. Like a girl. Do you know I ask this question, and I teach this all over the world, and it's the same everywhere. Everywhere. Now, there's degrees of it. The Italians, are a little bit more lax with their ability to express emotion. But we're all given these messages, and especially once we get in the workplace, don't show emotion, it's very bad. And so we get to be adults, and we don't know how to even identify how I'm feeling, other than when I say, how are you? You say, fine, like that means something. So we don't know even we don't know how to identify it, much less label it. And so that's where we need to start. So it's hard, even if you ask somebody else, how do you feel? They often don't know, and sometimes you have to kind of help them a little bit. Well, is it this or is it this? To help them identify that. So first we have to have a language to start speaking about emotion. And suppressing emotions, it doesn't help. So where do your suppressed emotions go? Where do they go? They cause what? Okay, stress. And stress affects what? Everything. Thank you. You get a brain for that. You're very smart. Whoa, she's losing her brains. That once happened to me at the Federal Reserve Bank. My brains were bouncing all over, but they didn't think it was so funny. So it affects everything in our body. But, you know, the garbage can only take so much. So even if it affects your immune system, your cardiovascular system, your muscular system, everything, it still tends to come out sooner or later. And who do we take it out on? The people we love. We go home and we release our emotions there. The people we most love. Isn't that crazy? Again, it's not logical. Or in your car when you're screaming at people. Or in Arizona where we're shooting at people. So when I talk about emotions, I'm not talking about suppressing. So the problem that I have about emotional management is I don't really like the word management, because management makes it feel like we're suppressing it. You're not. You're releasing it. So if I can notice what's going on, I can make the choice. Is there an action I need to take? Is there something I need to ask for? Or is this like ridiculous? Can I just let this go? So what you're going to see, what I'm going to share with you is releasing. And emotion is different from suppressing it. It's much more healthy. Besides, you'll make better choices. The problem is, one of the reasons why we have such a hard time talking about it is because, you know, actually, we did embrace emotions for a long, long time. The Greeks talked about it. Shakespeare loved emotions. But then this guy came along with his cronies, and they got in a big debate with this other guy, Spinoza, and Descartes said, you know, all that stuff beyond logic doesn't make any sense, and we should let it go and just concentrate on what we think. I think, therefore I am. And they won. They won the debate. And for that many years, you know, these hundreds of years, up until really 20 years ago, there was this logic first, and all that other stuff. And, you know, especially at work, leave it at the door. Emotions aren't important, as if we can knock out a bit of our humanity. And, you know, it is our humanity. If you deny your emotions, you're denying a piece of being human. That when we learn to suppress, the brain has an on-off switch. It doesn't just shut off bad emotions, it shuts them all off, and then we get to be really boring adults and wonder where our passion is gone. You know, and so we want to be able to release that, because you can't have courage without fear, or peace without knowing anger. We have to know, to have joy, you have to know loss. To allow them all, to have the full sense of humans. But, you know, we want our robots to show emotions, but we still don't want our humans to. You know, so that question, you know, the people that avoid difficult conversations because they might show an emotion, well, yeah, they might. Because that's who we are. And that's okay. And so for you as a leader to be able to create a space of safety, to allow people to express what they feel, because that's how you really help them work through it, to move to the other side, to change and to grow. So what happened in 1995 is when they perfected the fMRI and said, oh, what we were thinking all those years isn't true. You know, I remember in my second master's was in the 1980s in education, and a lot of that is kind of useless now. Because we were still thinking we perceive, and then we think, and then we create emotions. Well, you know, it just doesn't happen that way. We perceive, and we perceive not just through our eyes and our ears, but we perceive through our gut, through our heart. And then it hits two emotional centers before it ever gets to the brain. So we start here with the protection. Protection and possession, what it is I most want, as well as what it is I'm protecting. And then we have those two basic emotions, right? Fight or flight. And again, you know, this happens any time the brain perceives any threat. I mean, when you're talking to someone, even though you don't intend to say anything negative and they get defensive, how quickly do they get defensive? And then if you tell them, oh, don't be so defensive, what happens? Right? It's not logic. It happens here. But then if we happen to bypass that, it's not a big threat or there isn't something, ooh, I really want here. Then we hit slam into the social emotions, where we have this thing called ego and ego's not bad, we give it a bad rap. We all have a big ego. We have to or we can't survive. Ego is my sense of self and how I see the world. Again, it's that world according to me. And I have to have it so when I wake up in the morning, I don't say, who am I? Where am I? Although I travel a lot, and so sometimes I do that. Not sure where I am today. But in order to function, I have to have this. And that's why I dearly protect it, and so I will react when I think you're threatening it. All right? But then we have all these other emotions that show up. So there's like disappointment and doubt and love and embarrassment, all these things that are related to our social relationships, which are really important to us as mammals. So we slam first into the primitive brain in fight or flight, and then we slam into the social brain long before you have choice, last in line. And so it's kind of filtered. And so we don't always make the right choices. But what's brilliant, again, is that you can use your consciousness to back it up and say, so what happened here? What was it that my brain perceived that was going to be taken away from me, or they did take away from me, that I'm angry, or I'm afraid, or I'm embarrassed, or I'm disappointed, or I'm doubting based on past experiences? You can ask those questions, and then you can get some truth out of that. Really, is that true or not true, and what should I do next? And that's what emotional intelligence is. Emotions are information. They're really important. So my last 11 years working for companies was for a computer company, then a semiconductor company. And so I was teaching engineers emotional intelligence. And you know what I love, though? We did have a bunch of scientists that work in the quality division, and one of them said to me, well, you have to understand, the engineers really like logic, but the scientists are the dreamers. I love that. He said, so we have to have emotions to know which direction to go. Emotions are information. They are data. It's stuff that we need to stop and say what's happening and to use that information and not push it away. It helps us to make the best choices. And it's not about freeing your emotions so you can run around like, get your head cut off. So please don't think I'm asking you to do that. But once you free them, then you can look at them and then choose. And honestly, when you do that, you have much more power over them. And they start to decrease in reaction anyway, once I name them and claim them. Then I have the ability to choose what's next instead of my emotions choosing for me. So we have these emotions, and so there are really two. And so I said that a lot of times I talk about emotions here, but these emotions have biological responses. And so emotional awareness has to be a body awareness. It's not just in your brain. It's kind of late by the time you think about it. So what's happening? And when we get into the workshop this afternoon, we're going to do some exercises of identifying where you might feel your anger, your fear, your disappointment. But anger, fear, disappointment, agitation, resentment, all that is adrenaline-based. And woo, they go down into the body, and they prepare you to or flight, right? So if the blood is going to your large muscle groups, where is it not going? Your brain. So the question of, do you say stupid things when you're angry? And you all said yes. It's because you don't have full access to your brain. And even, people say, no, I do my best work under pressure. No, you don't. You focus well under pressure, but you cannot be creative. You cannot see all possibilities. You do not have full access to your brain under pressure. And on the other side, when I'm depressed, when I'm disappointed, when I thought there was a promise and it was broken, and I feel like, oh, things are not going my way, they're never going to go that way, we slow down to heal. And so you get up in the morning and go, I don't really want to go to work today. Ever felt that way? Your body's just saying, oh, chill out a little bit. So we notice these things, and then ask about them. However, sometimes you need to do this really quickly, in the moment, right? So you can't really be thinking too much about it. And so what I'm wanting you to do is to look at how to shift to creating an emotion that creates a neurological response. And that's what I'm going to give you a quick routine to do the shift. What happens when you shift to an emotion and really feel it, don't just think it, but feel it, to feel confident, to feel excited about the possibilities, to feel hopeful, to feel proud. To do that, what happens is then the blood goes back into your brain and everything opens up, and that's when we're most creative. That's when you're innovative. That's when possibilities happen. And that thing, one of your leadership, I forget what you call it, everyday leadership says laugh, right? Laughter, laughter creates the most spurts of chemicals, of the dopamine and the serotonin that really make you creative. So how many times are you really instilling laughter in your team? Before you want them to brainstorm, make them laugh. It opens everything up. So how quickly can you shift? And if you're really stuck in an emotion, I'm going to teach you after the break how to identify what's that stuckness, so you can make a choice. But sometimes you can't even do that till you make this shift. and really understand what can I do to feel these things, to open up the possibility. This is what creates resilience in our brain in order to create the action. So this routine that I want to share with you is based on, it was about 18 years ago, I was asked to do a program where I was working with a sports psychologist, and we were researching what does it take for top professional athletes to get into the zone under pressure. So I went out and I interviewed basketball players, baseball players, golfers, tennis. A lot of them hang out in Arizona in the winter. And asked them what they did. And it was interesting. Some of them had weird superstitions, and so I kind of set those aside. But they all had a similar routine. There were similarities in what they did, especially in that moment. And it wasn't about positive thinking, because they said, if I say to myself, you're a winner, my brain entertains the thought, you're a loser. It's not about positive thinking. It truly was fully in my body and present. And so these steps that I came up with really came from them. And you must do them in the order. But you can do them very quickly. So even if you're in a meeting and you have to get up and speak, or you're about to sit down in front of somebody and this is going to be a strange interaction, you can quickly do this. So on your table, you all have a handy-dandy pocket guide. So you can, take a look at it before you go in that meeting, or maybe even every day. And it has the 4 steps. I would really like you to stick this in your wallet or your purse or someplace close. Maybe you want to put it in your car. And practice these steps. But I want to say them first. So it's good. You're not going to always have access to the card. So to know it, so by the first words. So you relax. We first have to relax our body, since emotions have a biological response. We relax, we detach, we center, and we focus. So again, I did have some things that carried over in my education degree. And I know if you speak these words out loud, you're more apt to remember them. So please say them with me. Relax, detach, center, focus. I also know that if you move your body in complex movements while you say things, you're more apt to remember. So I want you to do the movements with me. Just don't bonk your neighbor in the head. Okay, relax. I heard a big sigh. Detach, center, focus. Okay. So I'm going to go through each step just so you know exactly how to do this. So I said I heard a big sigh. So what do you do quickly to relax your body? What do you do? Breathe. Do you know how many times a day you're holding your breath? Seriously? It's amazing. Because when we're a little bit afraid, just a little, we hold our breath or we shorten our breath. And that sigh, if you could actually pay attention to how many sighs you hear in a day, it's pretty incredible. It's the exhale that we release the tension. So it's not just the inhale, you got to let it go. You just need one. Some people need a few more, but don't hyperventilate. And let it go. And then if you know, and even if you don't know, we want to then do a quick body scan. Where is it that I'm feeling my emotions? So, when we identify them after the break, then maybe you'll know where to go. Where is your tendency to hold your emotions? But if you don't know, it doesn't matter. You start with the top of your head, okay? And you release the tension in your face. Some of us, especially when you drive, you do that. I know I do. I think that's why the Botox industry is doing so well, We relax our face. And some people, they carry their anger right here. Have you ever seen that? Some people, they look fine, but their little jaw is going. Drop your teeth. They shouldn't be touching. You just drop your jaw a little bit. You don't have to open your mouth. But they shouldn't be touching. That's why we have too much jaw clenching throughout the day, that little bit of anxiety. So you drop your face, just relax your face, relax your shoulders, relax your hands, relax your stomach, your legs, your toes. Some people clench their toes. I'm always amazed. What was it? A couple of weeks ago, I was asking people, where do you feel anger? And this woman said, my ears. I always feel it in my ears, so I don't know where you feel it. But if you even just do this, stop a couple times a day and just do a little body scan. Where am I holding tension? And release it. It'll be so huge for your health as well as for your interactions. So we relax and do a quick body scan. And if you're sitting in a room and you have to get up and present and you're just a little bit anxious, you can do a little isometrics. You just hold on to the table and release, squeeze it. Release, just release the tension in your muscles. And then, trust that if you were asked to speak about this, you know what you're talking about. You don't have to worry about remembering. The more you're afraid, the more you're going to forget. So just release the tension. So again, you can quickly do that. And if you don't do the rest of it, this alone will help. So we relax, we release the tension. And then as much as you can to clear your mind. And I know sometimes that's hard, and again, we're going to look at what are you holding on to. But in the moment, you can't be thinking about it, so can you just clear your mind? Again, it's not about what you're trying to remember to say. You've practiced it enough. Just clear your mind. So you relax, you clear your mind, you detach from your thoughts, and then as quickly as you can, you center. This was the big thing with the athletes, that they all said this is what they learned to do, and they had visualizations of elevators going down from their brain and stopping in their center and seeing glowing orange balls or something where they felt the strength. But how many of you have taken yoga or a martial art? Well, you know the power of your core. And if you haven't done this, I seriously recommend that you go take something. I took Aikido for 5 years. It was amazing to really learn. This is my point of strength. I speak from here. I walk from here. It makes such a difference in who I am and how I show up when I show up from my center. Again, if I don't know what I'm talking about already and I'm worried about what to say to you, something's wrong with me. That I have to come from here. And that's what they all said, that the moment they could be in their body, they could feel their body move, and it just felt good. And then they could play their best. That the moment they got out of that and they went back up in their head, boom, they were dead. And that's when they choked. So we relax, we detach, we center. So what I'd like you to do is just, especially for those of you who've never done this before, is just to take a deep breath in, as deep as you can, and put your hand on the bottom of your breath. Where's the bottom of your breath? And then as you let it go, keep your hand here and try to keep your awareness there. And just keep noticing that spot right there. It's just below your navel. And look around the room as you keep your awareness there. And can you do that without thinking? And what might you notice on people's faces and who they are and the colors and the things you don't normally look at that when you're in your center you'll see. That's your center, so work on that. And when I said take a breath and go to the bottom of your breath, if you went up here, you need to work on your breathing. So we relax, we detach, we center. But again, most of us, unless you've been a monk sitting on a mountain for a long, long time, we don't keep our brain clear for very long. So you can have one thought, maybe two, and that's it. This was really big with the golfers. They said, you know, we have one swing thought. If we try to do more than one thing, you know, head down, head down. If we try to do head down, arms back, we mess up. So your anchor. And I would say before you go into any situation where you might have a reaction, choose your feeling before you go in. Do you want to be calm? Do you want to be confident? Do you want to be determined? Maybe you want to be angry. You're a parent, maybe. But choose it before you go in. So when you start to get upset, you can quickly breathe, center, and you remember that key word. This is what I want to feel. You come back to the feeling. So yes, you're using your thoughts to create the feeling, but you must feel it to allow the chemistry to change. And the quicker you can do this, the quicker you can be present, you know, and then choose your best actions. Now, sometimes props are helpful, especially if things are going crazy at work. And so you can have, you know, things, pictures, and toys, and things like that, that will help you to shift your emotions. So I was coaching a woman who worked for our airport, Sky Harbor Airport in Phoenix, and she was a new manager, and she was given a really dysfunctional team. She inherited it, and it was really trouble, and her boss was no help. He was of no support to her other than he said, go find a coach. It was like, here, fix this person. And things got really tough because this was 2001. And when 9/11 hit, and you know the airports were hit really badly, and budgets were cut, and her head count was frozen, and she was really upset. And I said to her, why do you work here? And she said, well, I love aviation. This is my field. I wouldn't choose anything else. And I said, no, I didn't ask you that. I said, why do you work here in this place where you have this awful team and a boss who doesn't support you? And she said, my children live here and my grandchildren. I wouldn't want to be any other place. And I said, how many pictures do you have of them in your office? Maybe one in the drawer, mostly on my phone, I guess. I said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go this weekend. I want you to take pictures, get them off your device, print them. I want you to put them all around your office. So when you are really upset, I want you to go in there and look at the pictures and remember why you are there. And she did. The next time I saw her, she said to me, I can't tell you how important it is. Every time I'm really upset and I think I want to quit, I go in my office, I close the door, I look at my pictures, and I remember. You know, oftentimes our pictures of people, the people that are important to us, our pets. I don't have children, but I'm a pet parent. Our pets. Places that we've been, or even where we live. That's a picture out of my back door. I love it. That open our heart, that remember, that enliven our spirit, that give us meaning in our lives, that give us that alignment that we bring to our work. How many pictures do you have available that you can look at that will shift how you feel in the moment? So yes, you can have props to help you. You don't always have to remember those things, or music. is another way of shifting. We were laughing at the music, the elevator music. You probably didn't even notice. They did. That was going on, and the oldies sometimes just spark us, don't they? But what was the emotion that really can shift you? What was it that you said? Remember I said, what can really shift your chemistry? Laughter. See, I love that you have that because it's so true. It's so important that we laugh. So I'm asking you, what do you have in your desk, in your car, that makes you laugh, that really lightens you up? Because in that moment, and your pictures and those things, you have to rotate them because we habituate to them when we don't see them anymore after a while. So you need to rotate your pictures or your calendar pictures or whatever it is you have at least once a month, and your toys. You know, I forget about my toys sitting on my desk. They're just a part of the furniture. And so I need other things, you know, to make me laugh, or daily things that show up. Or I know you had Eileen here last year. I'll call Eileen. She'll make me laugh. So it could be your friends. So it was a number of years ago. I was at this conference, and there was a woman there. She was 87 years old, and she had written a poetry book, and it was called The Little Girls with Grandmother Faces. Isn't that sweet? I love that. She says, as I get older, I realize there are so many things that bother me in life that are now at 87, I think, that's really stupid. Who made these rules? Who said we have to do this? Why am I living by these things? And so she periodically went through that. And, you know, oftentimes when I teach leadership, I ask leaders to look at the rules. What rules say we don't trust you? You want to build trust? Look at the rules. Look at the rules and question them. So she said, you know, I've been looking at the rules. One of the things that happened lately was that I needed to downsize. It's time. You know, I go to a smaller place, and so, you know, I had to clean out a bunch of stuff. So I have these bags of pictures. There's this rule, you know, that you can't throw away photographs. I mean, how many of you have inherited photographs? Right, and we keep them. We don't know who those people are, you know. We have bags and bags, and now we keep them on our phones and our computers, and if you don't erase them right away, we'd never erase them. They just take up all this memory. You know, and so there's a law somewhere, some universal law that says you can't get rid of your pictures. So she says, you know, I can't take all these pictures with me, but I just couldn't throw them away. So I found another way of doing this. So instead of just throwing the rule away, maybe you can have something that makes more sense. So she says, what I do, and she says, I still pay all my bills with checks. So every time I would write a check out to the phone company or the utility company, I just take a picture. I send it off. And then she said, I went on vacation and somebody else paid my bills for me for about 3 months. And when I got home, I had all these voicemails from the phone company, utility company, and they're like, are you okay? Is there something wrong? Where's our picture? And then she said, you're going to help me. So she went off stage, and she came back on with a grocery bag full of pictures, and she went out into the audience and started handing them out to everybody. And to this day, if you go to my desk and you open up the drawer, you're going to see this weird picture. As you saw, I'm a cat person, not a doggy, especially a little doggy person. But that was the picture she gave me that day. And every time I look at that picture, I laugh just like you did. And whatever was bothering me, it just doesn't matter anymore. So what do you have? What do you have that brings that smile, that helps you to laugh in that moment? And to remember the story. I remember the woman and what she taught me that day. These are critical to your resilience, to your leadership. They're not stupid things. They're really important. So the steps are to relax your body, clear your mind, center yourself, and then choose one or two words. And the two that when I teach coaching skills are to be curious and care. So in every conversation you go to, can you be curious about what's happening? Careful of your judgments, your opinions, and what's formed them. And just, can I be curious? I want to know what's on your mind, how you see this. Because you obviously see it differently. You're having a different reaction than me. I'm curious. But we have to have compassionate curiosity. Otherwise, people feel threatened. Why do you think that way? So it's curious and care. I do care about you, and I'm interested in how you see this. Because they're going to feel that from you. They're going to feel your energy, the energy behind the words, and it makes a difference in how it lands on them and what happens next. Emotional intelligence increases your capacity to be adaptable and resilient. I've always said that emotional intelligence is the foundation, and it should be in every leadership program. It kind of like sets the pace. So we can then use all those other skills. Because in the moment, you're going to make a choice based on how you feel. Am I going to really practice that or not? Again, I teach coaching skills, and I'll do follow-up like 6 weeks later, and they'll say, well, I felt really stupid trying this coaching thing, so I didn't do it. So that feeling stupid, that fear that stops you from trying something new, of being okay with being a little awkward, knowing that you have to practice in order to get better. So emotions reflect our aliveness. They're a piece of your humanity. And when you deny your emotions, you are denying a piece of who you are. It's really important that we bring this back so we can fully experience life, to be present. Again, it's not about being weak, or showing something bad. It's about being fully here. And it's the only way that I can fully understand you, is when I fully understand and allow this. So I set my emotions free so I can have a conversation with them and then determine what's next. And it was Bertrand Russell who said, a world without delight and affection is a world destitute of value. So again, when you look at your values, your organizational values, teamwork, what is teamwork? That coming together of feeling like I want to be with these people. I want to create these people. Want to is an emotion. It's not a thought. The emotion must be behind the thought. And your leadership activities of that enabling, encouraging, of modeling the way has to have that emotional component to it. That's what leadership is. If you recall the people in your life, if I were to ask you, who made the difference for you? Whether it was a manager, a parent, a teacher, your best friend, maybe the cranky neighbor next door who taught you that lesson. I ask this question often, again around the world. And people always say, yeah, it was that person who believed in me, who believed in my potential. And that's what respect is. And they made me feel I could do something even when I thought I couldn't. And so, yeah, sometimes they'll say I was afraid, but they helped me find the courage. Or they said something and it made me angry, but then I was determined. Like that, well, you can't do this. Well, yes, I can. Anger actually motivates a lot of change on our life. Or they said they gave me hope when I thought there was none. Those are the leaders we remember, and that's really what I want for you, is to be that memorable leader. It was our former president, John F. Kennedy, who we're celebrating his 100th birthday this week, which would have been, he said, after the dust of the centuries have passed over our cities, we too will be remembered, not for our victories and defeats, for our achievements, our accomplishments, but for our contribution to the human spirit. And if you bring that to your leadership, you can make a difference, a huge difference in the workplace, but also to the world, and right now we seriously need that. That is your first step in emotional intelligence.